People often talk about the decline of North American manufacturing. In my opinion, what people don't talk enough about are the small startups. The men and women out there who aren't taking no for an answer and are starting their own shops. And it could be just over the fence from your own backyard. Enter Zealous Manufacturing in Wisconsin, founded by Justin Webb. Part engineer, part machinist, all American made.
So Zealous Manufacturing actually started out of a hobby. So I was really passionate about automotive and I wanted to make things. And I realized quickly that I actually wanted to make things and I was like, well, I think I can do it. So I dropped out of high school actually my junior year, and then I decided I was gonna just go to the workforce. And then I quickly got bored. I was a printer, so 12-hour days, 5 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 5 days off, and I was just kind of like, I can't do this for 40 more years. Like that doesn't seem pleasurable to me. My wife was like, you need to go back to school. She said, well, you should think about engineering. So then I met with a college advisor and one of the professors, and he was like, you're the perfect engineering candidate. He's like, you're a kid who wanted to learn, but didn't come the natural course. And then it was kind of, okay, now I'm in engineering school. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tommy Boy. I was Tommy Boy. He went to school in Marquette. It's about 20 minutes from here. It took me 8 years to get an engineering degree, but I was working full time and I was just kind of trying to get my brand and company started. And then I went into the workforce. So I learned CAD on the job. I learned, how things are made, and that's kind of where it all started. When I was in engineering school, I didn't have any money, so I was paying for everything. I mean, I got like a free CAD software. And I remember like all these other kids wanted things designed and they had these ideas, and in part of the automotive clubs I was in, they were like, oh, I really want to make this. And I'm like, well, I can draw it for you. I was actually charging people to do design work on the side. And quickly I ran into a lot of customers where they wanted, great, now make it. And I'm like, okay, so like...
With what?
So I found some really good local shops. They worked with me, and it was nice because they got a drawing, they got a CAD file. There was no questions. It was kind of like, hey, we'll do it, but it's 12 to 18 weeks.
It's getting pushed, yes.
So I actually bought this Tormach from a service guy at Tormach. He was a service guy, and he was actually helping me out. So he's a shop about 90 minutes in Madison, close to actually where Tormach's located. He had this machine. He also had a couple other machines, and he was like, he actually was running all my parts just on this machine. These machines are super nice because they're all single phase. The newer ones are 220. This is a standard 120 volt.
Oh, really?
So you just had to get air to it. I had a little pancake compressor that this ran on originally.
And it's enough to make it work, so.
And I negotiated. I said, I need all the tooling figured out. I need programs done. And I need like 6 hours of just show me how to turn the machine on and put tools in and run. And I drove up there. We spent the day, and I literally put it on a trailer and took it back with me. Like, I always take the parts that people are afraid to run, and I'm willing to try them. So I think I had one part that was pretty much just, for lack of a better term, it was a puck with a bore, and it had some like kidney bean slots, and easy peasy. Then the next part I took was all 3D surfaced.
Perfect.
Right, so most people, they don't jump from a straight 2D part right to 3D surfacing, but I was like, I'm just gonna watch a couple of YouTube videos, get the idea, and let the post-processor figure it out. So the fact that you can go from that to that 3D surfacing in no time, especially with post-processors and CAM systems, it was like, oh, this isn't that bad. And then it's, how do I get faster? How do I make it look better?
We're making parts while you were doing that learning curve. It's not like you had 8-10 months of just trying to figure it out before you can make a chip.
It took me 8 years to get a 4-year engineering degree, but if you're not willing to quit and you're just going to keep going, you can do it.
Right.
I encourage everybody to try it, especially if you're interested. I bought this, I think, in 2019. That sounds right. Just shortly before the pandemic. I bought it in 2019. And I don't think machines should sit.
Right.
Machines in nature, it doesn't matter if it's a CNC machine, a car, just not meant to sit.
It needs to run.
Yeah. I mean, you have bearings and you have all these mechanical systems that just need to keep running. So like I actually programmed a warm-up cycle because in Wisconsin, I mean, in January, it's brutal. I kind of had an issue where I only had this machine and I had a customer that wanted me to go full time. He was faster. And I was at the point where my previous career, I was kind of unhappy. So I called him up and I said, hey, I'm gonna quit my job. If you have anything you need, send it. because I don't know what's going to happen. And I quickly learned that you can't base a business off of one customer. So
it's tricky.
There was a falling out. It kind of went to the wayside, and then I was kind of like scrambling. I'm like, okay, now I just need to take anything I can get my hands on.
Right.
And I've always had a belief that if your machine's paid for and you have material, you can drop that hourly rate. But then once you start doing that too much, you get to that case where it's, now everybody thinks you're the cheap guy. So then I decided I have an engineering skill set. I'm going to go get a job to supplement and get us back to where we need to be. And now it's just kind of, I do that every day. And this is just what I've done for almost 10 years now.
So you got the one machine. That's kind of where you started out.
This machine started as a 770M, which is stepper motors, and it's just a straight collet spindle. So it's an R8 collet that they modify for their TTS system. So I upgraded this machine. It's got BT30 spindle. It's got servo motors on all the axes. So it's kind of like the 770MX.
Right.
But it started as an M. When I bought it, I added the tool changer. It didn't have a tool changer.
So although it didn't come with something, you could just upgrade it as you went.
Yeah, you can buy anything. That's what I really like. You could buy this machine without an enclosure and buy the enclosure later. So because of the compact size of this, and it started as a 5-inch puck, I couldn't run one op and two ops in the same. So I'd have to run all the op ones, switch out jaws, put soft jaws in. And I was like, I just need a tool changer. So we added the tool changer right away. The only thing that I will say, because it's all modular, it's nice, but if you change from that straight collet to the BT30, the tool changer changes. Everything on these machines is pretty self-explanatory. They have all the documentation of how to do it.
Right.
It's not like you're paying a service tech $200 an hour to come out here and do it.
And $160 travel time per hour.
So that's what I loved about this, is like, I can just take that and do it. You know, all the parts are pretty standard. You know, you just got some springs, some Belleville washers for your drawbar. You know, it's not like I have to order this part from somewhere. I can dig, I can get it from McMaster, Granger, all the components. Like if I needed a probe, I just buy a probe. That's it. It's not like I have to go in, have somebody turn on different features in the PLC. Everything's included. So, you know, flood coolant's basically there. It's just a plug. You can choose to have it. You can choose not to have it.
So, you know, obviously, right now you said you're doing a lot of is it mostly automotive stuff? Is it job shop? What kind of industries are you working in right now?
Yeah, so I do a hybrid. I do parts, job shop. Majority of it is job shop, and then I have products I just sell. So like, I was an automotive guy. So like the Volkswagen and Audi crew, they all put their cars on air ride.
Oh, yes.
And I did all the air ride accessories for a lot.
Perfect.
So like billet sensor arms, I did end caps, like on your air compressors. They look nice, they're all chrome, but on the back, it's just like pot-filled silicone with wires coming out. I was like, it looks bad, especially when these guys are spending like 10 grand to get this on their car.
Right.
So I make a cap that just covers it up, and then it reroutes the wiring. This part actually finished yesterday. I just unclamped it because it starts quite thick, a little bit bigger. So I thought there'd be stress. It's mostly an aesthetic piece, no real functionality, so I just kind of want to let it rest. But yeah, that machine ran there, no issues. I'm going to run another one because, as you know, like, when you do 3D servicing, you always want to find the tool path that looks best.
Yes.
So not super happy with that, but I can make some tweaks and make it better.
Also, if you got the time, the way I always run with this stuff is if I run one, I'll run two and put another one on the shelf because you never know.
Right, yeah, and for me, the goal is once I get a bigger shop, is to have some of these items on display so when people want to see, what can you do?
So obviously we got our machines. You know, we're trying to highlight the space so everybody can see a little bit. This is a very well utilized space. Machines are on one side, workbench and everything over here. Walk me through some of the parts that are on here. How do you keep organized? What's going on with the way this place runs on a daily basis?
Yeah, so organization was what the 5S of my life. I will probably change everything 5 or 6 times before I'm happy, and then I change it 5 or 6 more times. So I used to have like all tools in here, and then I moved them to like a specific mill cart so I can push this between the two machines if I want instead of running back here. I used to have like Schaller bins for everything, and then I was like, now I need more bins and I don't have any more room to put them, so I just started putting all my common drills and taps up there, just so it was up there. This is just a standard Husky that I just made a little weldment, and then I added a shelf on it to make like a hutch. You know, I'm not ISO 9000 and all the certifications, but I like to know if that says it's 500 thousandths, it's 500 thousandths.
This is one of the wildest parts I think I've ever seen.
So This machine came in for this project. So this arm starts off as an 8-inch wide piece. So there's 3 arms, each is their own billet, and then the center. It wouldn't fit on that. So when I started running this product, I actually put artificial holes, and then I'd shift the part, re-pick up, center to do it. And I was like, I can't do this. I did it for a prototype, it was fine. Then we made 50 sets of these. So I said, I need the machine that has the travel, not a big deal. That's really why I justified that machine. So this customer makes a lot of products for classic Chevy trucks. When you're building, some of these guys, and I look at the prices of these classic Chevy truck builds, I'm like, I go far and beyond, because I'm like, if somebody's paying $250,000 for a truck,
let's make it look nice.
Let's make everything as perfect as we can. And then I had, my engineering craziness when I was like, if you have a motor here and it's all sealed, it's going to draw a lot of heat. Right. So we added a bunch of surface area on the front. So it didn't have these grooves. It didn't have the side radial slots. I tried to put whatever I could to get heat out. This is 3 pieces. I did these all the hard way. I actually made a fixture that I could clock every orientation to do that slot. Try to do everything from the design, programming. It's me, myself, I, and my back half. I'm making your products. I'm going to work with you to get your product the best it can be with what resources I have. This part is actually for a customer. Ironically, it sounds redundant. Another C10 guy out in California. So when you buy some of these high-end motors, these $20,000 crate motors that are supercharged, it actually comes, this is a coolant. Everything else on the truck is, AN or Army Navy fittings. Nobody makes one with Army Navy fittings. So for a while, they were cutting them off and they would weld them on.
Oh, God.
But the item was anodized. So, you got to send it to get stripped. You got to weld it on, re-anodize it. So he said, do you think it could be done? And I said, I'm sure we could figure it out. So this customer said, I can buy the fittings and I can weld them on, and I'm at about $40 a piece.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'm not gonna be able to get that. No. Not machining this, and this is a perfect 4th axis part, right? So now I'm reprogramming for 4th, so it'll be better, but I kind of said, how many do you want to do? Let's figure this out. So this product is actually one that was my biggest challenge, 53 Chevy taillight.
Oh my.
So the original taillights, it was just like a three bolt that went into the tailgate, or on the sides of the tailgate. We've done 9 iterations of this before we settled. The original was a big block with small corner radiuses. So we constantly battled with this, and then I was always picky if there was a line here. So then I decided leave them all semi-finished, and then I made a fixture to cut everything as one.
Them.
So
to recut them.
I cut them all as one. It used to be a metal polisher. So I had another shop that was bigger. I started metal polishing to afford machines. I was metal polishing to pay for machines. Then we moved to this shop, and it was funny because I still have a buffing wheel. When we did all the prototypes, I aimed for, it needs to be buffed right off no sanding, just buff it with a wheel in the right compound and get that shine.
And it's like it's been chrome. You also have a laser engraver over there.
I think I spent $1,700 on it.
Yeah, that's actually a great deal for $1,700 there.
And it's paid for itself 9 times over. So now, on any of my products, I'll put my logo on the inside or somewhere inconspicuous. My philosophy, especially on financed equipment, it needs to run when it hits the floor. It can't sit for months, right? Because
we don't got the money for that.
Well, and you can't go to the bank and be like, hey, I'll pay you when the machine starts running. They don't care. So try to leverage everything you can. And like you said, building a relationship with somebody is so crucial, especially when it's machines. If you don't have that constant development with your customer base, or I always joke, because me, myself, and I'm not knocking on doors of random shops, hey, do you got any work?
You don't have time for that.
Right. I'm already, 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, and my dogs and my wife, and I'm like, that juggling act. So I've always said, if you can get a customer base and you have customers that are already established, great, make the jump.
Absolutely.
And that's what I kind of did.
Thank you very much for joining us, Justin.
Thank you.
And make sure you go check out his shop, Zealous Manufacturing.